We are live, it says.
I like that.
And you can still hear me?
I can.
So I was telling you my tech decided didn't want to work this week, which is like it made me really mad because it's like the only way I can do my job is through this stuff. And when it doesn't work, it's like it's that the stress of doing your job right never goes away, no matter what the situation is. It just never goes away. So, like I was saying to my wife, if the internet, like if we lose Wi-Fi one day or our internet connection's just gone for the day, you call Rogers, you do your thing, and then they tell you, well, there's a outage in your area, and you're just gonna have to wait until we fix it. It's like, okay, I guess that's a phone call to the principal. Hey, boss, just wanted to let you know I have no internet today. So I guess I got no internet today. Maybe you can log into my D2L and leave a note for the parents and the kids saying, Mr. C's not going to be in today.
Hmm.
And that gets me thinking about you and I have talked about our backup plans, right? So this is a great opportunity to talk about backup plans. So maybe what I should do Tuesday is when I post the teacher led learning for the day, I should say, hey, I was thinking about this over Easter weekend. If this happens, this is what I want you all to do. So if for one reason or another I don't come in here and post something for the day, it means I'm sick, somebody's sick, computer's broken, no internet. So this is what you're going to do. And I'll put in there my supply plans for the day or my supply plans until I return. I never thought I'd have to do that, but here we are talking about it. It needs to be done. So it will be done.
That's interesting. Supply plans. That is interesting.
Supply plans for this new age. Basically, it's just directions for, hey, parents, kids, I can't post anything today. So here's the menu of things that you can do. Here's the expectation for the day. I'll see you tomorrow. Now, whether people follow it or not, that's a whole other story. And I have no control over that. The control I have is, can I provide something? Can I still provide something even though I can't provide anything that day?
Well, that's. I think there's another layer to that, as in. Okay, so one of the before I get to that, stay tuned. Before I get to that thought, my other so my some one of the kind of cool one of the cool no, sorry, it's the wrong way to put it. It's not a cool conversation. I won't say it's a cool conversation because I don't know if it's definitely an uncomfortable conversation that I've been in a couple times in talking about how educators are shifting their thinking into this week. I mentioned, and not cavalierly, though I think some people might have taken it as a cavalier statement, that I feel like we're writing our next job description right now. That the steps that we're taking, that we're suddenly prepared to take in order to support our students, is changing how we will do education permanently. So the tools that we're using, the links that we're going to communicate with families, like everything that becomes the new toolkit, I said is going to leave stretch marks. Like it's not going to go back. It's not going to go back into the shape that it used to be. I really don't believe that. I really don't think we're going to go back into a system that the transition back into the system that we left, I think is going to be just as challenging as the leaving part. I don't think people were really thinking about the leaving part. I think the leaving part was kind of a I think everyone kind of had a triggering moment about the leaving part and the implications of the leaving part when it was opened up to schools to go in and do that kind of like recon, run in, grab your stuff, get in, get out. Like, if did your board have that where people could go in and kind of grab stuff from their classrooms? Yeah, you're nodding. Yes, mute button. Oh, I know, eh?
You got me.
I love that that happens still. I got to be honest. I love that that happens still.
But wouldn't you prefer that the mute button be on instead of hearing me coughing the whole time or
Wait.
sneezing or whatever? I'm just
Oh,
saying.
oh, dude. Yeah, I know. I love that. That there you go. Right, you should have muted that. But
So what I wanted to say, yes, sorry, I want to interrupt because we were allowed in once for like 10 minutes, get what you need, get out. And then the other day, my school did another Chromebook deployment.
yeah.
And this time, though, we weren't allowed in. But the principal said, if there's something you really need, message me what it is. I'll go get it from your room. And then when you can pull up and we'll deliver it to you and you can go, which was awesome because I didn't go in the first time. And then this second time, I was like, boss, I need my assessment and evaluation binder, right? Like I don't I need to know where I left off kind of thing. He's like, yeah, no problem. And it was awesome. He literally called me. He called me. He's like, okay, I'm in your room.
Where is
Direct
it?
me. Yeah. Anyway, so sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say that the second time around, he's like, you're not coming in. You're not allowed in. But please let me know what you need and I will do my best to find it for you.
Yeah, and we had similar stuff happening in our board where admin and caretakers were, kind of grabbing and setting stuff up, almost like a curbside pickup. That's all cool, but I'm still sort of in the space of the conversion back into schools is going to be it's going to be tricky. Like it's not going to be business as usual, and that might just be an obvious statement, but I think that where the conversations got interesting this week, we're talking with people addressing the fact that school won't, like, we're not going back. I don't think we're going to be going back into a system that will look like the system that we left. And the steps that we're doing right now to figure out education in a distance model, I think stuff will stick. I think that, well, I'll give you an example. So on Fridays, there's a group of us that were used to go for coffee quite frequently at a coffee shop near our school. And one of the people that was coming with us is on a parent leave right now, and she managed to meet up with us yesterday. So we had a virtual coffee chat. We hung out and caught up and updated. And she was asking, like, how do you do this? How do you do the distance learning? She said, I've just been so wrapped up in just taking care of my her two kids that she's not even in teacher mode. So it was a genuine question around how do you do this type of learning. Now, this is also, like, my school's 1-to-1. So we're already engaged in a lot of digital learning as a starting point. And the expectation that a student comes to class with a laptop or a device that they are able to connect with curriculum and create and interact digitally. So we're in some ways positioned well to sort of start thinking about what distance learning can look like. And when she asked the question about that, my immediate reaction was, well, don't do any planning right now. Like, don't do anything. Wait it out a bit before, because I'm not sure when she's back. She might be back in September, but I think we're still going to have some of the implications of what we're learning, the residual effects happening to how we do programming in September. I said, wait it out for at least another 2 to 3 weeks. I said, and then you're going to have a whole school of leveled up instructors for you to choose from to sort of figure out what your version of distance learning, what that pedagogy looks like. I said, but it's still too early to sort of like even talk about. And there was 4 of us we used Google Meet, so there was 4 of us in there chatting, and all 3 of us kind of shared what we were doing, how we were doing it. But I could see her sort of like, doing doing a little bit of that measurement, like, what am I going to steal from that? And that's why I sort of said, like, don't worry about it yet. Don't. And the reason I mentioned this is just because I think that that's going to be the new capacity, or as you've coined before, the new fluencies that even, let's say, tech resistant teachers, that if there was any resistance before to fully stepping into kind of like a maximized use of tech in your classroom, a lot of the tools that we're using now, even if you're a new adopter, translate back into the classroom. And I even went so far in talking with my spec ed team. I said, whatever we develop, we need to be developing this, I believe, not with the idea of distance learning becoming the norm, but relationship building becoming the norm. So if we're putting together resources, how does that draw us back to some sort of social space where we can learn together? Whether it's a virtual one or a real-time one, because we've started to put together a website for our department so that we can support not only the students but also teachers with resources. So if they're looking like, what does the resourcing model look like, we could say, oh, check out this tab on the Google site we put together. We've posted some stuff up there that speaks exactly to the question that you're asking, plus we have resources that are shared, so go grab it. So we're this mindful of the dual design of, okay, so if my starting point with this point was we're rewriting our job description. If we're rewriting the job description, I truly believe we have to be mindful of what we're injecting into that mindful job description. And any of the resources that we build moving forward, I think in order to keep a very clear differentiation about the positivity and interactivity of our lessons during this time within which so many people are on fire. Like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm doing it right. All the sort of like cause and effect and the worry. Am I still connecting with my kids? That I think that needs to stay centered in there, because I think ultimately, if we are rewriting our job description, that is the seed that will keep the experience of learning in a classroom, in a social space that is still a building, relevant as we move forward, and keeps a little bit at bay, because the version of the e-learning that the ministry is talking about isn't what we're designing right now. What we are designing right now, for the most part, when I'm talking to instructors, what the drive is, in this sort of like design model is the empathy. Every single one of the teachers is trying to design an individualized new e-learning or distance learning approach that entirely is taking into account every single one of their students. And of course, that's going to be really stressful. How do you do that? But that's what they're doing. That's the question. How do I do that? And that's what I'm really kind of digging about this. That's what's incredibly frustrating about this shift. But it's also part of the thought trap that we have to work ourselves through. Because if we're not, if I am not designing something right now that I can use once I have face-to-face time with my kids, then I feel like I'm not designing in the right direction. That's just me personally. I'm not designing in the right direction. And it is incredibly frustrating. And it's funny, I don't know if I said in the on-ramp or if I said at the beginning of this podcast, I'm not feeling like I'm a very good teacher, but I am connecting pretty good. And that's more my determination. I'm doing, this past week was a lot of phone calls. I talked on the phone a lot. To the point where I was just hopping from phone call to phone call to phone call, connecting, talking to parents, talking to kids, talking to my colleagues. So this past week, there was a whole lot of talking. See if next week is a little bit more about the teaching, but I'm not feeling like I have the assurance, or I don't have the triggers, indicators, and assurances of working within the system right now. I don't have the queuing system of the bells. I don't have my classroom to walk up and unlock. I don't have the light switch or the flashing light on my voicemail. And in the on-ramp I mentioned, there's a certain bit of withdrawal that I'm feeling by not having those systems of support. You could argue there's systems, but there's oppression, they're inequitable, all those things too. But just the rigor of holding to that daily structure this past week has been kind of a challenge, because I think it's tied to my identity as a teacher. I came to realize that being in a certain place at a certain time, connecting with specific people with a specific purpose, repeat, that was kind of pulled out for me this week. Or it was already pulled out. I just came to grips with it. But came to grips with it.
You did mention in the on ramp about how you're feeling as a teacher. I mentioned it too. I don't feel like I'm being effective. I don't feel I'm being as effective as I was in the classroom. So, but there's a couple of things there. Like, I'm aware that I'm not in the classroom anymore, and I'm aware that I'm struggling with my new job description. So I'm not, so I'm trying to be good to myself in that I'm doing what I've been asked to do, and I don't feel I'm very good at it, but at least I'm doing something. And yeah, and me, like I have to act in order to reflect and then like tinker and then act again. So for me, it's important that I'm doing something. If I'm not doing something, I'm not going to get better at it or change the way I'm doing it. The other thing, though, about writing our job description is the key for me is an awareness. We have to be aware that that's what we're doing. And you raise a good point. Now, I've got an example, actually. My wife, for the past couple of days, has been trying, she has an idea in her mind of a lesson that she wants to do. And, she's like, can you do this with this tool? Can you do that with that tool? And she's like really considering it, going about it in a way that's pretty cool to watch. What's not cool about it is that I've had to tell her several times, you need to relax, like you need to back off. You need to change your vision. I get the concept you want to get across to the kids. That's awesome. But the way you want to do it, she's in full innovator, creator mode. That's got a flip side to it, though. Here's the thing. It's that thing I told you about last week or the week before about creativity being forced upon you. So I've told her, you can do this and this and still get your concept across. She's like, yeah, but that's not my vision. I'm like, you're going to give your vision 48 hours. It's going to suck up all your time, all your energy for one lesson. I'm like, and you're going to be doing this for a while. Because I believe we're not going back May 4th. That's my belief. So if you're going to dedicate this much time to every lesson, you're in big trouble. You're not going to be teaching in 3 weeks. You're going to be exhausted on the couch, burnt out, feeling you can't do anything. I'm like, that's not cool. Neither one of us really have the luxury of burning out, because not only do we have our job to do, we have to teach our kids. That's the other thing too. The work that my kids are getting are not work that they're going to sit down and do by themselves. The 13-year-old just won't do it, or he'll do a little bit and walk away. 9-year-old will do it, but he'll do it all wrong. Now, I know it sounds like I'm not giving him credit, but come on, people, let's wake up here. I'm a grade 3 teacher. If I just tell my students what to do at school and walk away, we're going to have a problem. That's why I move around the room. That's why I call people to the back table to sit with me and work with me and talk to me, right? All that formative assessment, that's not happening if you just give your kids work and tell them to go away. So people, it's not just me, people are caught in the middle of all that. So nobody's able to burn out right now. And if they do, well, I hope it's not me or my wife. It took me off course a little bit, but we're writing our job description. So then slow down, people, and write it right, because you know what's going to happen. You kick butt, you do all these amazing things, and then that's expected. But then when we're out of emergency mode, people are going to be like, well, you did it there. And you're like, that was emergency mode. I did what I had to do to make it work. But people are going to take that and they're going to not use it against you, but say, well, you did it there, so you can replicate it here. I hear what you're saying. And I think part of me not going 120% is that feeling of I know myself, and I know that I need to stretch this out.
Hmm.
And I know that I need to keep what I'm providing my students with real, my students and my parents. So like last week, I was staggering my math and my literacy because what I wanted them to do with literacy, language literacy was going to take about an hour. Well, I'm not going to be that guy that says, "Well, you're going to do this today too, and that's going to take another hour." I'm not doing it. I'm not. My target is 1 hour, so I'm very judicious and I'm careful with my plan for a day, what it looks like. Now, that doesn't mean that once the kid is done, they're done. It means they negotiate with their parents negotiate with them. I have some families that have 3 kids in school.
Hmm.
Actually, one family has 4 kids in school. And so my that one student in my class, I think I assigned like 10 to 12 things last week, and he did half of them. That's because he had to split that computer time with his siblings who all also had work to do. And I don't know what their teachers are giving, and I don't know what their teachers are expecting. But I know the context of that kid's home. I know the parent as well. The parent is working hard, like raising the 4 kids and doing whatever she does for work and feeding them and keeping them active. Like I get it. So for him, that I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned because I realize the system told them, we'll let you borrow 1 computer per family.
Hmm.
Well, you can't give 1 computer per family and then expect them each kid to do their 12 assignments for the week.
Yeah.
Like somebody needs to be realistic. Well, that's going to be me in this situation. So he's done half the assigned work, but I realize what the situation is for him. So for me, it's like, okay, well, let's look at what you did and let's look at the quality of it. Did you just send it to me nilly willy and it sucks? That's not been the case. It looks like he's been putting an effort in, and I've been providing him with feedback, and it looks like he's been using that feedback. So in that situation, it works. I think people need to start thinking. Stop just going full throttle. Stop and reflect. Think. Look around. Get a feel for your audience. You know, that's where I'm at. So I appreciate you talking about writing the job description because I think some people are out of control.
Mm.
They're out of control. And maybe this is all they have to do, so that's what they're doing, but they're not reading the room and they're not thinking about people. I'm a privileged individual. My wife and I both fully employed, getting paid. We are doing our work. We're doing what we're told what to do and we're doing it. But we also have 2 kids. And I'm telling you right now, they're not independent learners. And a lot of 9-year-olds and 13-year-olds are not independent learners. So that means I have to sit with them, which means I got to walk away from the laptop for a little bit, work with my kids, and come back to the laptop and help my students and their parents. And there's always going to be somebody who says, "Oh, he's complaining." I'm not complaining. I'm just telling you my reality. That's my reality. And I need to find balance there. Need to find balance. And this is the last thing I'll say in my post to my students every morning. I say right at the end, I say, okay, I'm going to be in my Google Drive and I'm going to be checking my email often between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. So I'm telling them, hey, these are the hours where like I'm hyper vigilant, like I'm literally checking all the time. That doesn't mean that after 3 I'm not checking because I
Hmm.
realize some people are gonna do this stuff later on in the day. That's fine. Here's the thing, I'm still checking. I'm still checking from 3 to 10. It's just not as often. And there's space in there to help my wife with dinner and to maybe go for a walk with the family so we can get some fresh air and get out of the house, right? Or drive over to my in-laws and help them with something. So like life goes on, but I don't know about other teachers, but I believe that we're all plugging away. We're all plugging away. We're doing what we can. But you need to, I believe reflection's important, being aware is important. And you're right, empathy. Man, let's do this. Let's do this right.
You going? I want to bring you back to I think what kind of lit this up, this particular conversation, was you talking about emergency plans. Like if you can't be available during your course day with your students, maybe you are sick that day, maybe your kid is sick that day, and it's just there's just you're not going to be there. I think that's what lit me up as far as writing the job description, because putting that emergency, I guess it got me wondering if there's any difference between the emergency lesson plan that you post on your whatever your digital learning space is and just the regular work. And then there's the notification that you might make to your students that the work is posted as always, but I'm not available today because I have a sick family member or I'm not feeling well myself. And it's just you've introduced a new kind of perspective on this digital learning, and definitely a conversation with other people at the table, which might include your administrator, maybe your union as well, as to what does it look like if you have to take a sick day in this new context. What are the expectations? Because part of what's the thing that we're happening, I think that's happening within this conversation, is also the kind of the elasticity or flexibility of when people are doing the learning. So, are we saying that we need to have X amount? Like, are we holding tight to, since we don't have the bells anymore, ministry boards have said X number of hours, so assign only this much work. We've idealized when those office hours could be, when teachers will be, let's say, more available to have real-time conversations, but maybe asynchronously because it's email or commenting on a Google Doc. So we have an hour that needs to happen. When does that actually have to happen? When does that office hour availability have to happen, and how much flexibility do we now see in the system because we're not going to a physical structure anymore? This brings to mind like some of the challenges I'm having with resourcing some of the students that I'm on my list right now. Some of them don't get up until 2:30 in the afternoon. Like, they're sleeping in that late in the day. I'll call home to check in on. I can see that I've been added to the classrooms of the teachers. So my resourcing is going into the classrooms and helping the students with their coursework. When I go in, I have students that will use me frequently, and then I have others that it's just kind of every once in a while they'll ask for some support. Sometimes those students, I would bring them out of their classroom and we would go to a resource room, or we would just find a spot in the hall, or we go to the library and we'd have a conversation. So we kind of activate that alternative space option. So now, checking in on these students and knowing how I supported them, the fact that there's a geographical divide and a digital fluency challenge doesn't change any of their IEP accommodations. They will still have the same awesome stuff in one space and challenges in another space. But getting to them, because the way that they're positioning their work and their work day has been really tricky this past week. So even if I were to come back and say, okay, here's the ideal, here's what you should be working on this day. Let's say I put up that emergency lesson. I'm going to be sick that day. Or let's say my child is sick. Let's use that one instead. So it's a family illness. Some of my students may in fact be more active at 5 p.m. So if my kid was going to bed, if my kids were going to be going to bed, and at that point I know they'd be sleeping, it wouldn't be sort of actively supporting them, is there even any necessity for an emergency plan, or do I just shift my whole day to the nighttime? It's kind of, this is the new space, the new space of thinking. And when you started to mention the emergency plans, it also started to make me think about, I even go back into some of our past episodes, like, what does your bag of work look like now? Like, I know for me, I don't have anything sitting by the front door anymore. Like, everything that I need is kind of sitting. Yeah, it's up as you point to your head, it's up in my head, or it's on the lists that are sitting in, both my wife and I. So we've actually we have multiple office spaces now, so the kids will work on the main floor. I'm in the basement right now, and I've actually, it's part of me looking like I'm sitting at the kids' table right now is because I've pulled almost everything off of this desktop. Everything's gone. I've actually brought it upstairs to the spare bedroom, and I've set up like a, we had like this, it's kind of like a banquet table, one of those foldable ones from Costco whenever you have extra guests over. So I had that set up in there. Now with my school computer, my extra monitor, like I have that all set up there just because it's bright light. And there was no way that I was going to be able to feel well doing the work that I had to do for school being down in the basement. So I still have kind of like my bare bones podcast kit here. Why I mention that is just more so this all of the bag of work that I have right now is up there in that space. I have, rather it's a lot more austere than I'm would normally set up my workspace, but so much of it is digital now that the whole bag of work concept just doesn't really exist. It doesn't really exist. So
My bag of work's up here. There are notes as well.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just different now. What else is there to say, right?
I don't know. Yeah. So it's I like this past week was I had a couple what started as maybe more professional conversations, but moved into hey, how you doing conversations with colleagues. The whole meetup that I have on the weekly with some friends for coffee is one of those. But then there's other people that I don't normally, it's funny, I wouldn't normally get to see them in the hallway just because they're at the opposite side of the school or the opposite side of school and one floor up. I've been kind of intentionally asking them if they want to do a Google Meet. And a couple of them said sure. And we just kind of sit and chat for 10 or 15 minutes and kind of catch up. You came to mind in that kind of frame because you've often said there's people that you connect with because you can get to them digitally, like you wouldn't be able to or necessarily feel compelled to kind of like make the moment happen because there's so many other things happening. But if you can do it in your time digitally, that's also a way to build relationships. And it's funny, I've kind of activated that this past week. Just I'll send an email just asking flat out, hey, do you want to do a Google Meet to a couple different people? And some people like, I don't have the time. And there was one person that said, well, no, like I don't really want to talk anymore about school. And I was like, that's cool. But even I've connected with a few other people that I would, let's say, at least once in the week see in the hall and kind of stop and have a chat. And I think you and I we might have talked about this last week about the conversations are now just kind of cloudy, but I've been in a conversation recently about what does the virtual staff room look like? So what is that space where you can kind of accidentally come across someone and realize that you need to connect? You might be in there just sort of making your coffee on the Tassimo, but something happens in that moment and you realize you do want to make a little bit of small talk. You just want to have a little bit of small talk. And then you leave it feeling a little bit more whole. You sort of walk out with your coffee. You're not sitting down and having an extended chat, but you do feel like you've made some human connection there. So the staff room in my house is when my spouse and I accidentally take a break at the same time and we're making a coffee or a snack in the kitchen, right? It's kind of like, surprising because I'll hustle downstairs. I'm like, okay, I got a few minutes. I'm going to grab a quick snack. And she's already down there having a bowl of cereal. I'm like, hey, how's it going? Staff meeting. My kids are like on the computer off to the side working on something. So
That's funny. The whole so it's weird, eh? Like we had a staff meeting on the same day this last week. My wife and I, and my son had a Google Meet with his class all at the same time. And the night before, I said to my wife when I realized what was happening, I said, okay, we need to talk. These are the new family meetings. We need to talk. What's going on? Well, Will's on at this time, and his teacher's like teaching a lesson, so he kind of needs to pay attention. You're on at this time, and you need to listen to your principal, and I'm on at this time and need to listen to my principal. She's like, what's the big deal? I'm like, oh, this is not industrial internet that we have here. It's residential. We're going to basically break the internet tomorrow in this house. She's like, what's your plan? I'm like, well, I'm going to email his teacher and tell her he'll start in on the meet, but he's the first to go if you and I can't hear what we're supposed to hear in our staff meetings. So
It's like Survivor.
it is. It's, and he won't mind. Well, that's not true. Here's the thing, all this new anxiety that comes with this type of learning. My son will be pissed because he's there to learn. He's there to pick up the information he needs to do his work. But I told his teacher he's out. The camera goes first, and if that doesn't work, he's out. Okay, so it was a polite conversation, but it was like
Firm.
yeah. If I'm not getting paid and he's not eating, we got a problem. So he's out. And then, my wife, I don't know if she said anything to her principal, but basically I've told my wife, turn off the camera. They don't need to see you. They know you're there. If you need to speak, unmute your mic and say something, but the camera kills. So turn off the camera, and then I'll turn off my camera too. So hopefully with the two cameras off, my son's is on, so he's still doing his thing. Mm-hmm. But if it starts to go south, we'll get rid of his camera first, and then we'll get rid of his whole connection, then we'll see what's left. So it was just funny because everybody's just sitting around, they're looking at me, and I'm all like serious, Like I'm like general, telling everybody their orders and what's going to happen first, and it worked. It was fine. It worked, but those are the new problems, right? Those are the new problems. Yesterday, the first day off, which is weird because I was at my computer working and my son's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm working. He goes, it's a day off. I'm like, no, not for me. It's me and your mom. There's no day off. Like we're constantly doing something. We don't have to post anything today. So that's the day off, I guess. And he's like, Dad, the internet's really slow. And I'm like, I know you're right, but mom's asleep and your brother's asleep and you're on your iPod and I'm on my laptop. So lo and behold, my other son wakes up a couple of hours later and we're like, why is the internet so slow? He's like, well, because we've got the day off. I started downloading a new game last night. So he's downloading a game for his Xbox and it's eating all the broadband, right? Like if the pipe's this big, there is no room for air. It's all his game. So I sat down with him and we had a chat. I said, at the very least, you need to announce that you're doing these things so that we can say yes or no. Like he knows on Friday night, he's not downloading anything because I podcast on Saturday morning. And if there's a problem here, whatever problem is happening between you and I talking on the podcast will be multiplied by 10 by the time I get downstairs. So when I made that known to him, he understood 100% what I was saying. He likes his Xbox, doesn't want me to smash it. So he's working with me right now. But it's just weird. It's just so weird. And then I'm a little bit worried about what it's going to be like when we do go back. Like I do have some worry. Like I have to put real clothes on again. I actually have to go and see people and be close to them and talk to them. And like, we'll just be surrounded by people.
It's kind of, here's a parallel conversation. Here's a parallel conversation that I got no traction on Twitter. So I'm curious what your thoughts are. It was probably mid-March break that I posted out asking whether or not school boards are bringing in specialists for crisis management. And I wasn't looking at it from the point of view of making education, like keeping the ship straight. It was more like to calm the waters. So it wasn't about actual navigation. It was about more environmental factors. And I think one of the things I was curious about was And so I got no traction on it, but I've seen this pop up more and more in conversations now that people are becoming teachers, maybe even parents to a degree, have kind of accepted the burden of this next couple weeks of doing distance learning, much like your son in the Xbox. Okay, this is part of the burden of distance learning and making sure things are set up. Like it or don't like it, I have to include this in the consideration. I still want to get what I want, as in your son still wants to get a game, but so now I have to kind of reconfigure. I got to put that at a different time of day. So what I was really curious about was whether or not coming into this, like I have this kind of like concept that there are companies out there that do crisis management and catastrophe management, and it could be anything from um, you know there's a fire in an apartment building or an earthquake or something gets flooded. So you have the immediate responders that are dealing with the thing, just dealing with the dealing part, the responders. But then the outer ring of support system that keeps the responders in the game and then transitions them out of crisis response when we start to approach normalcy again. And I'm really curious because this is the question, your question saying what does it look like to go back into this space? I feel like, well, part of that we know what it looks like. You're gonna put your bag of work together, you're gonna pack up your laptop, you're gonna sort of get in your car, you're gonna drop your kids off at school, you're going to park in your probably same spot that you hope to get, that you always park in, you're gonna go in the same door, you're going to say hi to the same people. You might even stop along the way and grab a coffee. Like all those sort of like checkpoints are there waiting for you. And then at some point during the day, if it isn't already there, the anxious emotionality of the lost time and the trust and the what if starts to shift back in there. Like I think that fog is either there once you get over the adrenaline of like, woohoo, we're going back, we're getting back to where we were, like that sort of idea of that the between the bells lifestyle is what you want because it reminds you, that's nostalgia of when things were good. At some point I think the shine, I'll speak personally, will wear off and I'll be surrounded by the fog of what if, and I'll be surrounded with the, okay, well, we don't have a vaccine yet. I liken it to when I fell and I broke my shoulder. And when I fell and I broke my shoulder a couple years ago when I was skateboarding, the first thing I did is I stood up, which is like not what you're supposed to do. I stood up and I looked around. I'm like, I said to myself, I'm okay. I'm okay. I actually had this mantra. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. Kind of like pumping myself up. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. And then I sort of looked at my body and I'm like, whoa, I had this almost dissociative kind of moment. Like, is that my body? I don't know if that's my body. And then the feelings start to kick in. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a pretty bad scrape on my knee. And that is like, there's dirt and rocks and blood in there and it's still dripping down my leg. So I'm back in my body again and feeling stuff, but I'm still kind of on the edge. I'm still on the edge. I feel my left side's like so sore. That's what I fell on. And I'm like, oh I can't really move my left shoulder and my arm. Like, I don't remember my fingers feeling that way, but you know what? I'm going to drive home. So I drove home. And then I got home and I sat down in a chair at home and Karen walks into the room and she's like, what the blank happened to you? I'm like, what are you talking about? And then she calls, because I've already forgotten again. I'm back in the normal. But she points out my knee. She's like, you're bleeding on the floor. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I'll get that cleaned up. I stand up and she's like, and what's up with your shoulder? I'm like, what are you talking about? And I feel it. I'm like, oh, like it's like a Lego step. Like it went straight down and then out and down. I'm like, oh, I think I might have hurt my shoulder. She's like, yeah. So I walk into the kitchen and I put both hands on the table. Like we have this sort of like, kind of like a bar table for breakfast. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to just like kind of a shift. And I start bending down and I feel pop and my shoulder goes back in. I'm like, she's standing there. She goes, what did you just do? I said, I think I relocated my shoulder. She's like, you're nuts. Let's go to the hospital. I'm like, nah, I'll be good. So a week later, I'm sitting in a staff meeting and someone says, yo, Clough, like, what's up with your arm? I'm like, what are you talking about? Look over my arm and I have all these spiral bruises emerging on my left arm. I'm like, oh, yeah, that. Yeah, a week ago, I fell off my skateboard. Later that day, and I only recognized it as shock later that day, which was really strange. I was at home, and I took my t-shirt off and I put my arms above my head. Now my shoulder was sore. I got my arms above my head, my t-shirt like just above my nose, and I had a sudden wave of nausea, chills, like electricity running up and down my body, and just shivers. And I came to understand that as that was still, and I was talking to the doctor afterwards, that was still aftershock coming through. The pain that I felt in my shoulders, I was lifting, triggered everything, and I had some aftershock. And so why I kind of go back to this story is there are people that didn't leave school well. They left in a hurry. They've been away from this system for a few weeks now and will be continue for a few weeks. My mind, I want to believe that I believe that we have the most amazing people working on this crisis in leadership. I do believe that. But I also wonder if that's from a closed tool set that doesn't really see the bigger picture. Not because it doesn't want to, but because it can't. It can't. We can get great at deploying and connecting and redistributing and building educational models and tools that deal well with education. But this is not an educational crisis. There's nothing wrong with education right now. Nothing. This is so much bigger. And now that we've left this synthetic environment of safety, which is the between the bells, my key fits in my door really nice and smooth, and I can put my coffee cup right on my desk. Now that we're doing this from home, I think about what I no longer have connection to in what feels normal. And I'm getting tired of, constantly saying new normal, next normal. I don't know. But I do feel like there will be people, and you mentioned post like PTSD elements, for people to be back in the building and not have closure, for people to return to the building and not have closure for the leaving of the building. And that could be me. That could be me. Like I said, it was like a week and a half later and I had a little bit of a panic attack, a little bit of shock, and I had to sit down on the floor to sort of recognize that I had actually injured myself a lot worse than I had realized. Going back into the school, I don't want to underestimate or kind of like negate the possibility that there are going to be people that are going to have a really difficult time being back in that space. And it's not because they won't want to be. It's because they physically, emotionally, spiritually feel that they can't. Even if they can't articulate it, even if they can't say exactly what's going on. It took me a couple weeks to admit that I needed to go to the doctor and have it checked out, and x-ray showed I had a fracture. I had broken my arm. And then I had to wear the sling. So then became an 8-week process of wearing a compression sling for recovery with considered expectations of reduced usage, yet exercises at the same time to maintain flexibility. So I have an incredible amount of compassion and simultaneously empathy for all of my colleagues and friends that are right now sort of thinking about what will it mean. And this goes even beyond teaching. The people who are doing any sort of remote working, the moment that they're told, as Lecce did, Lecce kind of mentioned, we're on track for May 4th. My stomach just clenched. My stomach clenched. And sorry, I didn't find the mention of him saying that. That was from a journalist that had mentioned that Lecce said that. I don't know if it was in a press release. That we're still on track to return for May 4th.
Are you baiting me with that?
No, I think by all means, man, jump in and if you have, you add. If it's a bait, I want to hear what what you got to say. For me, it's just kind of like the tail end of the ultimate trigger. There are people that will read that and hear that and just go, I am not ready for that to happen.
The reason why I say bait is because we talked about this on the on-ramp. I talked about this on the on-ramp.
Mm-hmm.
So here's where I'm going to go with this.
Mm-hmm.
I read from the journalist that Lecce said that he believes we're still on track for May 4th. I'm paraphrasing. May 4th is still on the table with respect to our Minister of Education is what I got from that tweet. I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's just doing his job as a politician. He's got a job to do, and he's doing it. That's what I believe. Now, having said that, I'm not here sitting at home on my weekend, Easter weekend, thinking of what am I going to do after May 4th. I'm not going there either. Mm-hmm. I hear May 4th. I don't buy it. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to be safe enough yet. But I'm not doing anything to think of what my job looks like after May 4th. So it's these two things like living in the same brain, right? Like May 4th, nope, not going to happen. But what are you going to do after May 4th? I don't know. I'm not considering it. I'll wait for them to tell me what their plan is. But I just don't believe it. And I don't appreciate it. The response should just be, they shouldn't even be talking about when we're returning to school. They should be talking about when they're going to check in with us again. They should say April 25th is when we're going to give you our next update of what's going on with respect to going back to school. I think that would be fair. That would be fair. You do it with a buffer in mind. So you give us a date, and if we are going back to school, you give us a week buffer zone so that we can kind of get our heads wrapped out of the emergency distance learning and into I'm going back into a building. I think that would be fair. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. Hey, people, this is what we're going to do. We're going to give you check-in dates. We're going to check in. We're going to tell you the state of the union with respect to education. But no, he's like, oh, we expect the kids will be back May 4th. Well, how do you think people are going to feel and respond if and when they hear, oh, now it's May 31st. Now it's May 31st. You're going to piss a lot of people off. You're going to create an imbalance, right? You set everything up for balance and for success, and then you're the one that throws the wrench into the machine. So I think what should have been done is, hey, we're going to check in with you again on this day, and we're going to let you know what the health people say. Because ultimately, we're not going back if the people in charge, like the doctors responsible for letting us know about the whole health aspect of it, if they say it's not safe, we're not going back. It's simple. So why you set it up, you set yourself up, I don't know. Listen, somebody else said this to me too. We were the first ones to leave. We're going to be the last ones back. They're not going to put kids in first thing. As things get better, we're going to slowly reintegrate. The kids aren't going to be the first ones to go back. And if they are, I believe it's not a responsible thing to do. Not with the kids. Not with the kids. Anyway, that's why I called it bait, because I just said all that. But I
let me
don't
let me
believe we're
put
going
in
back.
yeah, let me put into it. So I just reread the tweet again. So it's from Travis Danaraj. So only because I think I may have started this, one of us started this. It wasn't. I'm just trying to find the Education Minister
Take
Fleece
your time, man.
says he is waiting on Williams' recommendation on remainder of the school year. He will guide our decision, but I want to affirm to you as soon as I receive it, I will be making it clear to you today we are on track to maintain May 4th. Okay. So this is that. So it is. So I guess it's quotes. So I guess Fleece did say it. And then after that, because at first I thought maybe it was sources in the government had mentioned that. So I just want to make sure that I was clear on that. So this is a quote from Fleece. And then after that, Travis also posted various government sources tell me there's no way a May 4th date to reopen Ontario schools. Sorry, date to reopen Ontario schools is feasible. It's unclear why this recommendation is yet to be made to the education minister. So, and then other people are chiming in. It's about optics. It's kind of like what you and I talked about. Like they're just not willing to declare anything too soon, or as they say, there's nothing off the table. There's nothing off the table. So, can I put my part in there from the on ramp?
Yes.
I think they're not only waiting for, and I'd be interested if anybody makes it to 56 minutes in our podcast. I also think that they might be waiting for some of the marks to be submitted into the reporting systems to get some sort of a measure as to where the effectiveness say flat out high marks are not necessarily, I even fall to the not, are not a reflection of a healthy education system. However, the Ministry of Education could look at be waiting for midterm marks to be posted, whatever they are, so that they can get whatever information they're going to glean from that. They may be waiting for that information as well before they mention anything, because they want to have some sort of spin or some sort of comment on the wellness or the health and wellness of the distance learning. So I kind of put that in there slightly conspiratorially, but I think that it's not only the waiting for the Dr. Williams to declare the numbers and the next steps, but I think they're going to try and also spin or connect or weave in to that a conversation about student success from distance learning.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I love the way you put it. I love the way you put it. Can I take what you said and spit it out my way?
Pivot.
When I hear you say that, it sounds to me like what you're saying is that the ministry would like to have some kind of data around this emergency distance learning.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, this looks different. It must look different in elementary than in high school, or at least I'm assuming it does.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's like chaos circus, what it looks like for me. I don't know what that looks like for high school. But anyway, when you said that, I don't doubt that at all. Of course they would like to have some data. Of course they would like to collect something around all this, hoping that it will bolster their position. I don't think by me saying that it's like, I think what I'm saying is what any government would do, right? Any government would do the same. They would want to collect information. They would like to collect data and then see if it helps their position or if it doesn't help their position. Now with this government, this is me talking now, I'm a little suspect considering that they had taken data, that survey that they put out about what parents wanted, and then they went ahead with their plan, and then thanks to OECTA, we found out that they had no data to back up what they were doing, and that's why they didn't provide us with the data. because it did not provide them with any kind of permission to do what we said they could do.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, personally, whatever they say, it doesn't hold any weight with me. It doesn't hold any water. But I hear what you're saying. I think that this return May 4th is political. I think based like the reason why, and I'm not saying that just because of my own opinion. I'm listening to the radio. I'm watching television. I'm listening to the experts, the scientists, the doctors. They're saying certain things, and what they're saying doesn't fit with, in my case, putting 650 people back together again in a building for
Mm-hmm.
8 hours a day, every day, 5 days a week, doesn't fit with that. So I have a hard time believing that the Ministry of Education is going to send us all back when all the experts say you can't go back yet.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said on the on-ramp, and I'm happy to say it here on the podcast, it's based on my perspective and my understanding, it's giving a lot of parents hope that their kids are going to be going back to school in May. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair. I mean, based on what I'm hearing and stuff, I'm worried about my kids going back to school in May.
Yeah.
I'm worried about my kids. What does that look like? I don't know yet. And I have some of my teacher friends, they refuse to listen to my perspective. They're like, no, we're going back in May. I'm like, what is it that needs you to go back so bad? And they're like, I can't do this. So their whole interest in returning in May is to make this stop, to make the emergency distance learning stop, because it's killing them. I'm like, dude, it's killing me too. But I would rather this pain and suffering than finding out that somebody in my family has COVID-19 and it's hitting them hard and like taking them out. Or somebody in my class gets it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were or somebody in my class got it and gave it to their grandfather. Like, that's horrible. I don't want us to be remembered in history as the group of people that decided, well, this is so important, we got to go back. And then it took a lot of lives, like I don't want that. And I'm not doing well with this distance learning either. Like I had a conversation, well, whatever you want to call it, over email with my ESL teacher. And I put out some work and she took a look at it and she said, hey, can we do this and this so that it's more appropriate for your ESL students? And I'm like, of course we can. I'm not opposed to that. What my issue is I'm thinking I got to get stuff done. I have to have something ready for these kids. I have to have something that I can teach them. And so what's happening with that kind of focus is I'm missing the bigger picture of making sure everybody's included and everybody can participate. It's been very difficult for me. But with her help, I'm able to do that. I'm able to move in that direction. But that stress of thinking you had something ready and then being told, have you considered this and have you considered this? And it's like, yeah, you're right. Those things need to be considered. And she made a comment and I'm like, I'm dying over here. And she took that as a joke. And I'm like, I'm not joking. It's like 9:30 p.m. I'm gassed. This is my time now, but it's not my time because I have to make sure I'm ready for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's like, you're fine. I'm like, I sure don't feel fine. I'm fine in that I'm able to do the minimum of what I'm asked to do. Am I reaching all my kids? No. And I told you this on the on-ramp. There are a lot of my kids who aren't participating.
Yeah,
and
same for me.
This week is going to be the week that I find out why. And it's going to be some hard conversations. I have a feeling I'm going to have some parents who are really going to be like upset. Like, hey, you're giving us this stuff to do and my kid just won't do it. And I get that because I see those struggles. I saw those struggles day to day in the room where I can sit with you and joke with you and offer you different things to do to get you back on track. I can't do that here. You know, I can't call 20 kids a day. I can't do it. And I think a lot of people would tell me that's not reasonable. I would think my association would say that's not reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, other people might ignore that because their position is different and they're coming at this from a different place. But OECTA might say that's not reasonable. So I'm in the middle of I don't want to burn myself out, but I want to do what I can for my kids because that's what I'm here for. But yeah, like I'm feeling the burn, and I've been doing blended learning for years. You know, I've my kids know how to use D2L. They can get in there and they can do stuff, and they're still not doing it. So it's not the tool, it's the fact that I'm not sitting beside them.
It's the trigger. It's the trigger. It's not the tool. It's the trigger. It's the context.
Yes.
It's the person that represents the broader system of encouragements and supports that the kid, you know, they know snack recess happens at a certain time. They know tech club happens at a certain time. They know how to they know that they're only allowed on the east side of the pavement of the school. They know these things, all this stuff that has taken time to seed and structure and support. So there's no surprises when it's what I was mentioning before about my own kind of loss of gravity, that there are things about being at home that will never translate to the queuing system that I crave that happens with the being in the actual physical building, right? And whether they're young students who have to be constantly monitored and supported by their parents, the teacher at home, or the older students, the teenagers that are staying up late, they're more independent, they're kind of living their lives, living their own life, and not being available for when, you know, the teachers are putting up their office hours. It's still the same without that common landing place of queuing systems, of language, of support systems, of camaraderie and collegiality. That's it. It almost feels like I'm circling back to what will it be like to go back to make it back into the space after all this. Because in the same way, you know, I said before, we're kind of rewriting or writing an adjacent job description. The students, our kids, are also rewriting their own operating systems about what it means to be a learner. And the stretch marks that we will feel being back in a common building again. Like if it took us 2 weeks to figure out how to even approach distance learning, will we need 2 weeks to figure out what it means to be back in the school again? And then what? We're at the end of the school year. So that's what my brain kind of keeps. That's, you know, my brain is like a little fly on the window. Like it keeps thinking that it's going to make it into that space because there doesn't seem to be anything in front of me, but I just keep bouncing off the glass. This like weird kind of thought trap that I keep bouncing off of because I can't see myself through to that space at all. Like I can't make myself go to that space. And I'm hopeful. I just want to add that within this frame. I'm hopeful. I don't know if it's you or me, but one of our mics is really scratchy. How's your USB? I'm just checking my connectors.
Everything here is good. Like when I mute, do you still hear anything on my end?
When did you mute? You're muted now? Move your head. I hear nothing. Unmute. Move your head. Yeah. There's something on your end that's scratchy.
Do you think it has something to do with my beard? Or like you actually hear like a scratch?
It's not it's not an abrasion. It's not like It's not. I don't know if I can even scratch on mine. It sounds like a connector scratch.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, dude, everything is
You know, it might be like it almost. It's one of those that somewhere. I don't know. I think it is. It says something with your headset. Yeah, I kind of did the scratch and pull on mine. I'm all firm. Oh, I got to try and grab that thought that I was riffing on. Will we need time
you
to?
while you're talking, so that
So what was I riffing on there for a second? Just talking about needing time to transition back into school, and then we're at the end of the school year. And I'm hopeful. There we go. I found it. I'm hopeful. I'm someone that even in conversations with people, I recognize that I'm scared. I recognize and own and talk to the fact that I have fear. But at the same time, I'm also aware of I'm teaching myself skills for the next version of me as the teacher. The website that I'm building for the students in my community culinary class, I will keep building on that because I do believe, and some of the feedback I'm getting from the parents is that even though they can't get to it, they like what they're seeing there. So if they were to get the opportunity to cook with their kids, they're appreciative that I'm sharing structured recipes. They're appreciative that I'm sharing little videos. They like the stuff that I'm putting there. So I know that I'll come back with different tools in my toolkit. So I am hopeful. And at the same time, I'm scared. You're not, I can't hear you. I can't.
what about now?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay, so pinpoint the problem. It's here and it's down there. So I'm
Is
gonna
there a mic jack like up in the one
no,
side, like it actually plugs in, or?
no, it doesn't plug in. So what's happened is it's been pulled. It's been it's received some stress. So you know what that tells me? I need to pull the trigger today and order the new headset. I wasn't gonna, but now I
The
know.
cable got a good yanking.
It got it, and you know what? I know exactly when it happened. I'm not gonna put blame anywhere, but when it was being used this week, people don't when your equipment is not used by you, people don't
It's not the
know the
same.
intricacies, right? So it's been pulled and now it's busted. Now I know. Okay. Sorry
Okay.
about that,
No,
but
no problem. Go back into your thought though before it wanders away from you.
I'm just saying it's hard. It's hard to talk about. You don't want to say you're ineffective, right? You don't want to say that you don't feel like you're doing a good job. You just don't. Nobody does. Nobody does. And I think I think I could do it better. I know I can do it better. Um,
Do you think there's space to say that I'm not being effective? Do you think that's received as someone asking for emotional help, or do you think would be received? And I'm trying to think of the different contexts you would say that. I mean, I've seen the Twitter posts of that, and sometimes I wonder if, because the quick responses are about the worker element of it. The better responses are the supporting the human making that statement. So helping someone talk about their feelings, the impact of their feelings of being ineffective. Because if we're quick to just throw strategies at people that say that they're getting bogged down at not doing their job well, and they don't feel like they're being a good teacher, I think, like, I hear that as I also need some emotional support with this, because I may learn to get better at it, but I'm really having a hard time dealing with the emotionality of it. I think also for some people to admit that they're not doing a good job, they may feel like there's an HR response to that about, well, no, you got to step up your game. Like, this is how we're doing things right now. So make sure that you are doing a good job. Like, some people feel like they have to toe that line to do the work in the exact same way that they used to, because they see it as, you know, that their job could be in jeopardy if they don't do well. And I put that in another comment on Twitter, and again, I put a lot that just doesn't get any response. I could just be the lack of the low numbers of people that follow me, but I put that out there. Like, is anybody? I forget the way I put it, but I put down something like about admitting that you're admitting that you're admitting that you're afraid right now doesn't, like, it's not connecting with being a bad teacher. It's just addressing your emotional state. And yeah, just to circle back to where I start on this, when people talk about being ineffective, my brain receives that. It sort of latches on to how does that make you feel, as opposed to what are you hoping to get better at? Because I almost feel like how that makes people feel is a really important space to stay and just kind of like unpack a little bit, talk a little bit about, and then kind of say, okay, now that we've talked about it and your emotional state's been acknowledged, and you may feel like your moment has passed, you've been able to kind of like release yourself from that thinking. Now that we're on that side, how might the system support your learning or support your pedagogy so that you don't have to return to this sentiment again? You can feel like you're sort of doing something, one small thing, two small things to move forward with what will make you feel better about not being a great teacher right now. Because that's maybe what it's more about. It's not about getting to that space where you feel like you're in rock star status, but that you're more comfortable with the fact your emotional state. You get cozy with the fact that you're gonna feel bad for a little bit. How do you not feel bad about feeling bad? I don't know.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up.
Oh, you got to push the mic. We just lost 30 seconds of great content.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. This is so like there's a window right there.
Yeah,
You know what's going out the window when this is over, eh?
absolutely.
Okay, so the emotional state's important. And that totally resonates with me because most of the time, if you can get into my head, in okay, can you hear me? When you can get into my head and help me deal with the emotions, that's going to help me move forward. So my concern is not the my concern is not learning the pedagogy or not learning the techniques or not learning the tools. I can do all that, and I know I can do all that. My issue is the emotions. I need to get past, I need to deal with not feeling well in order to get that punch of energy to move forward and to become a better teacher in this newfound experience. That's a really good point because I think I have some friends that aren't feeling bad, but they don't believe they can learn to be better. And what that boils down to is time and energy, right? So they just don't want, at this time, they don't want to put the time and energy in. They're not feeling so bad. Me, I'm happy to put the time and energy in, but I need to deal with my emotions. And right now, I just don't feel good about, what I'm putting out. And most people would probably look at it and say, that's fine. What you're doing is fine. But I know that I could be doing more or doing it differently. And whether it engages students or not, it's a whole other thing. And that's a whole other issue that's kind of bringing me down. But the context of all this is, like you said, is so different. This would not happen in class. If I have a student in class that won't, I'm going to use the word comply, or won't engage, there are things I can do with that student to give them a break, to build them up, to distract them, to encourage them, to jump in and to give it a shot, whatever the learning is. I don't have that here. I don't have that here. Sending them an email is not the same. And like I said, I can call, but I don't know what's happening at home when I call. Like at school, there's some control over the environment. I have no control over the environment at their house. I don't know what's happening.
Nor should you, right? Nor should you have any of that control, which is an interesting other little mindset too about, are we, God, like this is just bringing to mind our lack of, when we don't have control over what's happening in the home, the perception that somehow we're doing something wrong is incorrect. Acknowledging that we actually don't have control over what's going on in a kid's home is the exact reminder for us, like, stop, back off, pause for a second, think about the expectations or the rules that you're trying to hold for your classroom that are entirely tethered to your classroom, but they're just like getting bashed around by the home life. So I've seen those compliance video, those, because people post it up, right? Like it's either going to be the parents, a lot of times it's the parents, or it's teacher parents are like, I can't believe that. Well, I was in a conversation this week. I can't believe that there was a percentage of penalty on these tasks that needed to be handed in by Tuesday night. Like who puts a penalty on there?
Some people are rolling like that.
I know, and I get that that's a, I get it. I get that this is a thing that we do. I just don't get why it's a thing that we do now.
Because people are still trying to have the control they have in their classroom, but they're doing it in this digital space.
So it's just porting the same tools over. It's kind of like using the similar toolkit, kind of.
Exactly. It's like when they left school, they packed up their backpack with all that stuff. They come home and then they're told we're doing it like this now. So they just opened up the same backpack and pulled out all the tools that they would use in classroom.
Okay.
But they're ignoring that they're not in the classroom anymore. This is my take on it. I want to say Carlos has been writing in the comments here. He said, as we were talking about this, he said that feeling inadequate is accepting your reality and allowing you a starting point to change.
I like that. That is a hopeful, I think that is a hopeful and a mindful and I think a next level bit of self-reflection.
For sure. There has to be an awareness. There has to be a reflection piece. If you're not aware and you're not reflecting, you're not going to know why you may be feeling inadequate. And you're not going to think you need a starting point to change. Like, I recognize I need to shift. I just don't know how to shift. But maybe this conversation that we're having, and with our third party Carlos jumping in, maybe this is for me. This is the starting point. This is the starting point for me, I think.
I think part of it, the admission, the noticing and the admission and the ownership it has to be the starting point. And I think doing that with better information means that you'll grow somehow, right? That you'll grow somehow. Noticing that you're having an emotion that you can't identify is a starting point, but you need to be able to move to the next level of what is it that I'm feeling something. Then the next level is, what am I feeling? And then the next level would be, now that I'm feeling this, what do I want to do with it? And then after that, there's a whole other set of progression of things of like even building a plan coming out of this. Noticing that there's a fork in the road. I know that there's better parking spots. Like really, if I pull into the driveway at my school, the most efficient way of parking would be to grab the spot that is right there. It's a rather inefficient way for me to get to class because it would be the farthest from the actual classroom. If I take the parking spot closer to what would be my classroom, what's closer to my classroom, the doorway distance isn't actually closer. It's just a spot that I can see my car from. So it's closer to my classroom, but I'm technically not that much closer travel wise than if I grab that first spot as soon as I come in the actual school. So how you notice it, when you notice it, I mean, is also kind of embedded in your routines. So for someone that I like that, I'd mentioned before that, you know, the Dweck stuff on growth mindset. Part of the conversation that I where I go with that is the anxiety and the heart palpitations that come from being in a growth mindset are the reminders that you're at a fork in the road. So you're having a physiological stress response to the fact that something has changed. Maybe it's you, maybe it's the environment, maybe it's something in between. And being able to kind of take that anxious moment and actually do something with it is also connected with growth mindset. Because I think even in, you know, I hope leadership is not posting up too often about the opportunity to exercise your growth mindset right now without also being compassionately connected to the wellness of staff, because the feeling of doing something differently, even if it is in the right direction, can feel horrible. It can feel absolutely horrible, even if you're on the right track. And I think that is one cost to growth mindset. And right now, everyone is exhibiting some of the stress factors of growth mindset, I think. Whether it's the doubt or the anxiousness or the stress or the overeating, you know what I mean? Like these things, the avoidance, like everyone's in a bit of a growth mindset boat right now. And if you can shift to fork in the road, opportunizing this to move in a different direction, fantastic. I'll just circle back again to I'm hoping also we're having the conversations around supporting the emotional state there. As flat out as connecting with people that you would normally see in the halls digitally and just checking in, doing those random check-ins. In the same way, wherever you park your car and you happen to run into someone as you walk in the building, would you say hello? Likely. How do you replicate that now? Well, you send out an email, maybe you send out a Google Meet opportunity. Just want to check in, just want to say hello. The exact same stuff that we're asking people to do in the general population, say, you know what, make sure you check in on that elderly grandmother or that uncle that's sort of living on their own. Do a check-in, phone them. I think it's a great way to start helping people kind of work through the emotional states that they're feeling right now, whether it's the parents, the kids, or your colleagues, to be honest, or even your leadership, reaching out to your own leadership and saying, hey, how you doing with all this? That plate's got to be full day after day after day after day. So
That's a good point.
You're going to have to hold it. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to write a blog post on my leadership blog around leadership during this time, because not only am I doing my job, but I'm paying attention to my leadership, the leadership, and how it's responding, and I feel like I was considering my school leadership and the pillars of the Catholic leadership framework. And it was awesome because as I was thinking of each pillar, I was checking them off, thinking of how my principles are operating, what they're doing, and how they're working on. They probably don't even know because they're not looking at it the same way I am. I'm looking at the pillars, I'm looking at their actions, their words, their behaviors, and I'm able to make that connection. I've been wanting to write a blog post about this since we found out we weren't going back to school. And I just haven't been able, that's the thing, I haven't been able to sit down and do it, but I'm hoping this weekend I can put something together, because I don't want this time to pass without me having reflected on it and blogged on it, because I believe it's going to be a very important blog post moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
The true test of any leader, in my opinion, is how they operate during a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you said, their plates are always full. So it's no different in that their plate is still full, right? But the other night when my principal called me to talk about something, he messaged me, said, "Are you still at your desk?" Because like we're all living in front of a computer these days. And I'm like, "No, I just walked away from the desk." And he's like, "Can I call you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And I think he felt a little bit bad that he was calling me on my free time. But I was like, "No, man, it's all good." Like, I needed to talk about my issue and he needed to make sure that I was good with my issue, which is awesome, right? Like my principal's calling me at like 10 p.m. because he knows what we need to talk about is going to weigh heavily on me until we talk about it. So let's just do it. Now, some people wouldn't like that, but there's another part of what he's done. He's built a relationship with me. So I don't see it as like, you know what? I've been thinking about this situation and what it would look like for me if I did not have a relationship with my administrators. I
Mm-hmm.
guarantee you it would look 100% different than it does now. I guarantee it. But I don't have to worry about that because I have two administrators that I can trust and I work with. And I like to think that they feel the same about me. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there and can't wait to throw my headset out the window.
Yeah.
So is that it, man, for episode 26?
I think so. Season 3, episode 26. Who would have imagined? Who would have imagined? I'll keep going back to that. 2 seasons ago.
I was actually thinking about how we started the other day. I just, you know how you remember some things as clear as just crystal clear.
Yep.
And I remember where I was sitting when I texted you my idea. I remember our first chat and you saying we got to keep the video part of this going. This is going to be key. The video is going to be key. And I was like, why are we doing video? And now it's like my favorite part is the video.
I totally agree. And it was funny. It is the one thing, just, tapping back to chatting with Beth on her podcast. It was a little strange to not have the video feed. It was a little strange. Like, and just, again, I'm aware of the like the conditions of podcasting. I get that. The conventions of podcasting and conditions of podcasting. I get it. You kind of mostly do, the voice only. I get it. But when we were talking, I noticed that I had a different feel where it was just our disembodied voices. Like I had to work a little bit to center myself to make what I thought was a human connection with the crew. And it was funny when I was no longer talking or being talked to. I did have a sense of disconnect. Like I felt like I was, and not, I won't say excluded, but it was like I was no longer a part of the conversation. And I'm not going to say, and again, this is not negative. This is just it's just the awareness that I now have from having, as we said, we've done creeping up on the end of season 3 seasons of this, meeting for the most part on the weekly, checking in, seeing each other, noticing things about our environments and how we look, and like the on-ramp and the off-ramp. To do the voice only was, for me, a little less rich. And that wasn't the conversation. The conversation was fine. It was just all the other information that makes it feel relational, which includes the video. So I appreciate you and the fact that you kind of went for it, because I don't know if I had no clue of the implications, apart from, I think my primary focus was just to do something different than what we had done before. And that's all it was, just to try something different. And it's become indispensable. Like I do enjoy the video, and then having it kind of existing in multimodal spaces out there. So
Well, if you can hear me,
I
you
can
hear
hear
me?
you. Yeah.
Is I'm like an elderly person who's like, "Can you hear
Can
me?
you hear me? Yeah.
Can you hear me?" This is what this is. So I talk about privilege, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this privileged person sitting over here can't even get a headset working. It drives me nuts. Okay. I'm glad we had this chat. I needed this chat.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like soul chiropractic medicine. Like sometimes I feel corrected. Like just a okay, good, that was good. Just a little didn't know that I had a kink over there, but thanks for pushing me in that direction.
It's my tonic.
The tonic, the kombucha.
I'm reading a book to my students, The Chocolate Touch.
All right.
And it's about this kid named John who everything he touches turns to chocolate.
All right.
Everything he puts in his mouth. So his parents took him to the doctor and they gave him a tonic. It's an old school book. It's kind of fun to read. But so yeah, when you're talking about how to fix your problem, I just need a tonic. This was my tonic and I'm good.
And away we go. Back into the week.
Okay, well, I know that I need to catch up on there are episodes of the podcast that I've not pushed out to whatever Apple podcasts. So I got to do that.
All right. I appreciate that. You want to see the scribble?
Sure, I'd love to.
All right.
Liminal?
Yeah.
What does liminal mean?
Oh, I'm not even going to tell you.
Okay.
I'll let you look it up. When you look it up, you're like, all right, I see where he was going.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm not even going to look it up. I'm going to tweet Beth Lyons and I'm going to ask her if she can tell me
Perfect.
what liminal means. Don't go anywhere yet.
Oh, you're going to...
Oh, there she is. Okay.
Oh, I got an email from Tim Hortons.
What? What do they want? Your donuts are ready?
They're remaining open because they feel like they should.
Ah.
They're talking about different places that are sort of doing good work in communities. And I'm sure they're going to end with, they're using their trucks and drivers to move essential supplies. They're thanking their team members, doing whatever it takes that you would expect from hardworking, good people. And from our family to yours this weekend, please be healthy and take the time for a moment of hope that we will get through this together as a country, as neighbors and Canadians.
I told you about my son's braces, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just checking to see.
It's
all good.
It's all good? Okay, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not, there's no new problems, but
yeah. I shared that story as far as what would we do if that happened. And Karen was just like, what? I'm like, we might have to get in there with the clippers. Maddie's in the room. She's like, I'm good. Feels all good. I'm all good. So.
You know what? You just telling Maddie the story.
Yeah.
It's going to have her taking extra care of her mouth, right?
Yeah, it did. It was a cautionary tale.
Awesome. Okay, buddy. Great chat.
Absolutely. Have a fantastic week.
You too.
Moving and shaking. And I'll see you throughout the week, okay?
You got it. Take care. Oh, happy Easter.
Oh, yeah. Happy Easter. Happy Easter to you as well.
Thank you.
Ciao.